What's up, nerds? How's everybody doing today? Well, planning day. Today was planning day. I think it went okay. um, Maybe not quite how I expected as I started writing everything down and brainstorming it. We're gonna do a heavy drawing session today because I'm gonna kind of talk it out, and you know how I brainstorm this stuff as we go. I might change my mind on a few things, and I don't know, we might mix it up. But it's definitely worth putting down on paper, virtual paper today. So let's just jump into it. I got to go for a bike ride later, so we can't spend all day doing this. All right, let's get my handy drawing screen up. You'll get a little peek into how my mind works for this whole game dev process, right? It's gonna be a little messy, but hopefully not too messy, right? So let's move this out of the way because I hate that little window. There we go. All right. So first off, how did I go about putting this all together? Well, we're gonna start with some rules. I started off this morning just like putting Post-its on my windows and my walls and just kind of throwing information at the wall. And then I took a step back and I started looking. I'm like, I got like 100 Post-its everywhere and there's no way to organize all this information. And I know it's not all good. So I took a step back and said, we need some rules. I can't just jump into, there's too many possibilities. We got to have some rules. What's important? What are we trying to accomplish? What's going to move us forward, and like what's going to reduce the amount of risk? That was a huge one. And here's what I came up with. I had a whole bunch more rules, but I think I did a good job of distilling it down to what was actually really important. Number one. Yep, you can see that. Okay, good. Number one. Hang on, give me a second here. I want to make sure I don't screw things up here. Okay. First rule, have a demo in every Steam Next Fest through 2027. Steam has 3 Next Fests per year. You'll see it when we get to the schedule slide. And we start drawing the schedule up. But essentially, there's 3 Next Fests each year. I want to have a demo in every single one of them. That's not going to be easy. It's kind of a aggressive goal, but having a demo, having 3 demos made per year. If when I get to the schedule portion and you kind of see how I'm thinking through these games, you'll see that doesn't seem that unrealistic. It is a bit of a stretch goal, but you'll kind of see how I was thinking about this, and it does make sense. The other reason is because of how quickly, right, the money can run out. And I want to maximize my shots of having a game at least provide a year's worth of, money so that I can make more games. I think if I have a demo followed by a launch in each Steam Next Fest, then I'll even if I miss one, that'll give me enough shots that I'll definitely know, is this going to work or is this not going to work, and should I just try something else, right? I mean, that's ultimately the goal, right? The goal isn't for me to get rich on my very first year. The goal is to do enough in the first year so that I get a second year, right? And then I get to do enough in the second year so I get a third year, and then eventually we want to get rich. So that's how it works. Having a demo in every Next Fest is one rule. Second rule is every game has to provide systems or tools to the next generation of games. If I'm going to have a demo in every Next Fest, I don't have time to start from scratch every single time, right? Every game has to give something to the next game. The reason that is a really important rule, it made my top 6, is because one, again, like I just said, I'm not starting over from scratch every time, but that also means that each game only has to be developed partially, right? If I'm pulling significant amounts of systems from previous generations, that means this generation only has a smaller way to go before it's complete, right? That's not only going to have some continuity in between games, but it should also drastically speed up the development pipeline. Number 3, it's kind of the same as number 2, but a little bit different. Each game must move its franchise forward. When I get to the schedule thing, you'll see I've sort of bucketed my games into franchises. The idea here is very similar. It's a little broader than systems or tools being provided to the next generation. Think of this more as there has to be a reason for each game to exist. A good example is the map game that I'm working on. I think it's a cool game. It could be done pretty quickly, but I could see how that game could fail rule number 3. It's a cool game that exists in a franchise, but I can't think of any way that future games would build on what the map game starts. So in a sense, it's not moving the franchise forward. It just sort of exists in the franchise, and therefore it doesn't actually have a purpose for being. That's kind of how I'm looking at rule 3. And that helped me eliminate a lot of ideas that seemed kind of cool, but just didn't make sense in the short-term strategy. And there's a lot of games that don't move the franchise forward that you could do once you're already established and you're not trying to very quickly ramp up into a self-sustaining company. But I think for now, for the first 2 years, everything's got to just keep moving forward. Number 4 is kind of an arbitrary one. Basically, this is every game's got to have the potential of making some money. I mean, what's the point? Yeah, if it provides tools to the next game, that's great. If it can be done quickly and I can have it at Next Fest, that's cool. If it moves its franchise forward, that's also cool. But if it's a game that's just very obviously not going to make any money, then I should fill that slot with something else that also follows all the rules. This also is sort of me keeping myself honest on game ideas where maybe the scope just doesn't really lend itself to a game that could potentially make $100,000. 100,000 is just a nice round number. It's very arbitrary, but I'm essentially looking for, like, each game has to have the possibility of funding me for a year. That's basically it. I mean, $100,000 is a little high, but it's just a nice number to look at. The other things that go into this rule, I was thinking about, it's a combination of like genre, features, what's the market look like? So you could say, well, a game that has a gigantic potential addressable market maybe doesn't need as many features as a game who is targeting a much smaller niche market, but, you know, potentially has a lot more features to get a larger share of that niche market, right? It's kind of how I'm looking at it. And then also the keep me honest portion of it is, hey, you know what? If I'm getting towards the end and the quality level of the game doesn't look like it's going to make that much, I probably got to up the quality level, right? We're not going to release games that, you know, obviously are not going to make money. We're not going to do it. I would rather sit on a game a little bit longer and make sure it has potential than just throw a game out there that I know is going to be a loser. Rule number 5. Assume all games need me to learn the same amount of marketing. No shortcuts. There were a surprising, this is on the list for a very specific reason. There were a surprising number of ideas that I was kind of excited to make. Quite a few games that I was actually pretty excited about. But when I started thinking about, what am I good at and what am I not good at, I realized there were quite a few games on the list only for the reason that I felt like they would be easy to market. Not because they were good games, not because they had a lot of potential or move the franchise forward, but just because I felt like this would be a really easy one to market. I won't have to do a lot for this. So this kind of made it on the list to keep myself honest. To be honest, it did. There's just no way around it. I'm gonna have to learn how to do some marketing, right? It's better for me to just admit, accept it, choke it down, and learn how to do it rather than compromise some of the games I choose because I don't think I'll have to do marketing on them, right? So there's a rule for me to keep me honest. And then the last one is kind of just added just because this doesn't really affect a whole lot, but it's more of a reminder. There's a category of games that I have that I'm going to do someday called vibe games. They don't really have a franchise necessarily. They don't really, I would say they're kind of one-offs, experimental type games. So my favorite example is the game called The Ramp, right? It's a skateboarding game that literally, like, there's no scoring. There's no progression. There's no skills. There's nothing. It's just, you get a skateboarder, you're on a ramp, you skate around, do a few tricks. It doesn't track anything. There's nothing to unlock. You just do it. And then when you feel like you're done, you stop. That's it. That's the whole game. There's nothing else to it. I'm calling those vibe games where it's just a single mechanic and you kind of just do it to see what it's like when it's done. Some of them most of them are just highly experimental, very, you just make it to see what it's like. I have a lot of those on the list. But at least for the near term, I can't be spending time on those. Like I shouldn't be working on those. The only time I should be working on a vibe game is if it has no impact on the franchises. And what I mean by that is I'm usually going to have like 1.5 games in development at any one time, right? Just because I want to avoid burnout. For me, having multiple projects is a good way of doing that. So I can switch mindset. So usually I'm going to have 1.5, like I'll have my main franchise project going, and then I'll probably have the next following release also started. And then when the one releases, I'll probably start the next following release afterwards. I can only imagine working on a vibe game if I either can't start the following release because I'm waiting for a tool to be done on the current release, or maybe I just don't know what the next release is and I'm still kind of trying to think about it. Like, vibe games only fit in where they fit in, basically. All right. So those are the rules. That's what I was thinking through most of the day, kind of helping me focus on what actually is important and how do I move forward. What you'll notice, what's not on the rules. You'll notice speed is not on the rules, and you'll notice games I really like are not on the rules. That was a big deal. As I was going through, I was kind of trying to whittle down what I should and shouldn't be working on. I'm really biased towards, hey, this game can be done fast. And, oh, I would really like to work on this game. And when I really kind of thought about it in the context of the big picture, which is don't go bankrupt in the next year, A lot of the games that I wanted to make just because I wanted to make them don't make sense. So I had to be disciplined and just understand the scope of what I'm trying to do. And I'm like, okay, just because I really want to do it, or just because it's a game that I can do really fast, that doesn't mean it's valuable. So I probably spent a little more time on the rules than I thought I was going to, but this really is the most important part of the process I went through today. All right. The second thing was, in order to hit the top two things, which is have a demo on every Steam Next Fest, and every game's got to provide systems or tools to the next games. It's really important for me to just like be specific about, all right, what am I good at? What can I do, but maybe I'm just like average-ish at? And what am I actually not good at? Because in order to keep the cadence going, at least for the next year or two, I have to focus, like I have to have laser focus on this. Like I have to be laser focused on what am I good at? I can't be spending time trying to figure out how to do stuff I'm bad at. It's going to take too long. The quality level is not going to be where I want it to be. And like learning new skills is great when you have time to learn new skills, right? When you're starting from scratch, you have to laser focus on what you do. And I have to scope every game to be 95% stuff I already know I can do, and probably like 70% at least stuff I'm very good at. I'm okay with doing a lot of stuff I'm okay at because I can always get a little bit better at those, and I don't start from zero. But the bad stuff I'm not gonna be able to do. So what am I good at? Complex systems, right? From 20 years of making football and basketball games, they are the most complicated games I've ever worked on, right? Sports games are complicated. They're unbelievably complicated. So I've gotten really good at not only just like creating and implementing complex systems, but like I think in these systems just naturally now. So like I can, this is going to sound really stupid, but I'll come up with an idea for a hybrid draft / auction system for the NFL, right? Where it's a draft, but it's also like an auction, and you can, move up and down, and there's also like a recruiting, there's also like a recruiting component in it. Like I'll think up that system, not even near a computer, just walking around. Right. And I'll understand how the systems all work with each other, and how they work with the roster, and how they work with the AI, and how they work with the data, and blah, 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 blah. Like I just think that way now. So I'm going to try to capitalize on that. Not a lot of people do that. That's something I'm going to try to capitalize on. Character AI, I'm pretty good at. I have honed my character AI systems through sports games. If you think about the read and react AI that has to happen in a football game, on a 10th of a second, 20th of a second, it's pretty complicated. Not only do you have the read and react, but then you also have the long-term AI that has to factor in, and players need to balance both of them, and then also be able to change strategy and on a fly and stuff like that. Coach AI, right? Team building AI. I've got pretty good at that. I've gotten pretty good at it. Just understanding how to turn what decision making of a human into numbers. I've gotten pretty good at. Same with team management. I've actually got quite a few different team management systems. So I've got a lot of tools for that. And then large data management, right? Most of the football games I make now are 10,000 players, 200 to 300 teams. 200-300 coach, probably 1,000 coaches, right? All of that stuff all working together. So I've gotten pretty good at that. One funny little story. When I was working at Canuck Play on Maximum Football, I still remember we're running up against the problem of consoles couldn't handle the amount of data that we were using for just a pro league. Or no, it was the college league. It's just the college league. And that college league didn't even have the full 134 players. It didn't have it was a pared down version of a college league. And consoles are having a hard time crunching it. So that was the data system Dave came up with before I got there. I was looking at it and I'm like, you could get the size of these save files down to shrink them by 90%, and you could have the data get processed in a quarter of the time if you just did this, and this. And I remember he got so mad at me for proposing that. He kept telling me it was impossible, and I don't really know what I'm talking about. So one day, I took one day, rewrote his data system, and save files were less than 10% of the size that they were previously. The data crunching portion of FastSim went from 45 minutes down to under 1 minute. It was pretty funny. That was when I kind of realized, you know what? I actually am pretty good at data management. Things I'm kind of okay at. I've gotten better at gamepad control. Cyber League was, I got pretty good at it working on Cyber League, because now I've got it down where I have a pretty good system where I can have 4 local gamepads going, on the field gameplay, and I can keep track of it all. And I've got a pretty good system for managing all of that. And local multiplayer. It's not great. I keep improving it every time, but it's pretty good. Pretty good at game physics. Not the greatest, but pretty good at it. Interface mechanics, I'm pretty good at figuring out how to make the interface work for what I want it to, especially when I'm doing a lot of really complicated stuff. The most complicated things I've probably done are the draft. Draft interface is pretty complicated. Surprisingly, depth chart interface for football teams is probably the most complicated interface. And trade negotiation is actually really complicated too, but I'm okay at it. Not great. What I'm bad at, anything art related. I'm not an artist. Everybody knows that. But it's important for me to put that down, because a lot of the ideas I had would require a pretty heavy art lift. If I can't do it, that means I got to hire somebody, and I do not have the money to hire somebody. So we're at the stage where I have to be able to do it, or it doesn't get done. So any ideas that require a lot of art to make it work, I just, I'm not going to be able to do it. It's on the bad list. I can't do it. Anything that's going to require a really fancy or pretty interface, it's probably not going to work, because I'm very bad at making the interfaces look really pleasing. I think about a lot of the mobile interfaces you see, how pretty they are, and how every element is a custom drawn graphic. That's just not going to happen. My games have to be able to be made with pretty average complexity interface, or pretty average aesthetically pleasing interface. The game cannot rely on the interface being pretty. Environments. I'm not good at making environments. I know how to. I'm really bad at making environments look good, though. So a very environment heavy game is not going to work. A good example would be that pirate game I was thinking about making back a couple of years ago, where you're a ship and you kind of explore islands and you're a pirate. Well, you need a lot of really cool looking environment to make driving a ship around fun. Because otherwise it's just ocean. You're just driving an ocean. That's boring. So when I was trying to make that game, I ran into a huge problem where all the environments looked like trash. Well, if I can't do environments, then this game is kind of mediocre at best. Animation, I'm not good at animation, so any super heavy animation game is just not going to work. Think human football, right? If you want to make a Madden clone, that's a lot of animation, right? 2K basketball. If I wanted to make a 2K basketball clone, like that's a lot of animation. I'm just not going to be able to make all that. Actually, I shouldn't say I can't make it. I do know how to make all the animations. It would just take me so long because I'm not great at it. I would redo them over and over and over, and it's just like I'm just not great at it. So, and anything that's non-humanoid, oh my God, I'm even worse at animating those. So any animation heavy game is just right now off the table. Maybe once we get to a point where the company's stable, but as of now, no. All right, now let's get to the nitty gritty. All right. So with that all said, what's it look like? Well, here's where we are. Here's what I'm thinking. We're going to have two franchises. This is going to be broken down into like two franchises. Franchise one, what color should we use? Let's use pink. Franchise one, we're going to call Friendship Franchise. That's the Friendship franchise. This is all of the games that I have on my list that have that super broad appeal. Like kids can play it, guys can play it, women can play it, like Riley will play it. This is the one that's like, it's super, super broad. A lot of the games have to do with, there's like a friendship component of it, right? There's a relationship simulator built into it, kind of like a nicer version of the Nemesis system. But that's what you think about that, right? Think of the Friendship franchise as the super broad appeal games. Then there's the sports franchise, right? We kind of know that was, since I've been doing sports games for like 20 years, there's going to be a sports franchise. And then there's vibe games. I did have a bunch of other ideas that they're cool, but there's a lot of ideas I had that were cool. But the problem is they didn't move. First of all, they didn't move any franchise forward, and maybe they most likely didn't provide systems or tools to the next generation of games. So I think by breaking all the ideas I had down into discrete franchises, and each franchise has a very specific focus, made it pretty clear that there's a group of games I would love to do someday, but now is not the day. And there's a group of games that will help launch, the company from zero to self-sustaining. My strategy for that is, right, we're starting at zero. We're going to build these franchises so that when each game comes out, it's a little bit better. It moves the story along. And whatever customers or fans we get, they're definitely going to be on board for the next one. They're going to be excited for the next one, right? So we not only get whatever inherent marketing we can do for each game, but we also get the momentum, right? We get the word of mouth. That's the whole point of narrowing down to just a couple of franchises. Why Why these two? They just had the most games. They had the most games. They all fell within what I'm good at. They all kind of didn't really spend a lot. There wasn't a lot on the what I'm not good at. So that's why. All right. So let's get started. My thought around the first game was I was working on Map Game, and I sort of let the cat out of the bag before. Map Game doesn't really do anything for the Friendship franchise. It exists in the Friendship franchise. It doesn't provide any tools that move it forward, though. So I think we're going to hold off onto the Map Game. It may end up falling. It may come later as I get more tools and kind of rethink what that game is. It may turn into a vibe game. I don't know. But the one game that did make sense to get on the list as quick as possible was the town. We're just calling it Town Game. Very creative, I know. This will have a name someday. Right now, we're calling it Town Game. It's basically a game where you we're basically the whole game is you live in a town. I think I've talked about this before, but basically there's a town. The whole screen is just this town, and there's little characters that run around the town, and your role is to assign quests and put together little parties of these characters that live in the town, and they go off and do the quests, and they come back and like you get some loot, and you give experience, and they get better, and then you upgrade the town and you attract more adventurers, and then you get better. You could put together better parties, but then some adventurers don't like other adventurers. They have competition, but then other ones become friends, and they work really well together. And like there's rivals and blah 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 blah. Right? A lot of stuff. This makes sense to do first because it provides some very specific things to us. Here's what it provides. It provides town upgrading. I'll show why that matters in a second. Townies. So townies being like in the town, the little characters walking around and talking to each other and practicing and shopping and all that stuff and becoming friends or becoming rivals or fighting or whatever. Basically just living in the town. So the townie system. What else? Oh, the quest system. All the quest systems. This will provide, we'll obviously have to develop the quest system. What else? All the, I guess we can call it the friendship system. Friendship systems. What else? That's about it. I mean, obviously there's more stuff in the game, but these are the key things that the townie game gives us. And my thought is this one, what should we use? Let's use a star. This one is going to be the very first Next Fest, the one in October. I think this game can be done for the upcoming, or at least the demo can be done for the upcoming Next Fest. That means it hopefully launches sometime in November, December. For a game like this, timing doesn't really matter that much. I'm not competing with the football season or anything like that. So I think Town Game is going to be first. I think second, it's pretty obvious what second's going to be. I've been talking about it for a while. Cyber League 2 is probably going to be second. I mean, right now it's second. Cyber League 2 football. There we go. I had to make the letters line up better. It's a little ADD of me. Yeah, we'll do that right there. Let's put a little square around it. Cyber League Football 2. You guys know what that is, but let's talk about what it gives us. First of all, actually, you know what? Let's talk about what it gets. So town, part of the reason of doing town game first is the town upgrading system is a system that's going to go right into Cyber League 2. That doesn't make sense, Sean. Why? How is that going to work? Well, the town upgrade system is essentially going to be your workshop in Cyber League 2. That's where you're going to upgrade your robots and you're going to do repairs and you're going to, upgrade your facilities, or there's going to be a whole huge section of Cyber League 2 that revolves around you in your workshop, just managing your workshop. And the workshop quality and like your ability to upgrade it is what's going to kind of push you as a franchise from the bottom towards the top, right? You're never going to have a top rated franchise with a crap shop, right? That just doesn't make sense. So that's going to be a major component of Cyber League 2. The townies system is going to go right into Cyber League 2, right? Your workshop is going to be full of personnel. It's going to be full of robots. Things are going to be happening in your workshop, not just random things. These are like things that matter. You're going to be able to tell what kind of team you are by just sitting back and watching the people go, just watching what happens in your workshop. What happens in your workshop is going to be a reflection of your franchise and where you are. You got a lot of guys that are damaged. You sit there and watch your workshop. You're going to see a lot of repairs happening in your workshop, right? You're doing a lot of upgrades. You're going to be able to see that in your workshop, right? Because again, each game has to have a quality level that could sustain the company for a year. I can't just have some BS workshop, right? It has to be something that you're going to be like, ooh, this is really cool. And plus I can do some YouTube shorts. So I can do some YouTube shorts with it. The quest system and the friendship system, not really useful for Cyber League 2, but that's okay. We're going to get two systems out of that. The whole workshop system is actually going to be pretty important. All right. What are we going to get out of Cyber League 2? What's important that we're getting out of this? Well, the most important thing, you're getting the movement system. In fact, the movement system is the whole reason I'm doing Cyber League 2. I love the Cyber League movement system. So we're going to perfect it. And that's one of the most important things coming out of it. What else? The AI systems. The specific person, like the player AI system for specific players. That's a really big thing. It's actually a very complicated system, not needed for the town game. Just the townies version of AI is all it's needed. It's very light. The Cyber League is going to need the very hardcore AI systems. This is something that's going to be used for a lot of games. All right, I'm taking a look at my notes here. I scratched like a million. Here's what I'm looking at. I got like pages and pages and pages of notes from working on this stuff. The shop systems and the auction. Buying upgrades, doing the league auction. Those are pretty hefty systems that once they're put together in like the nuts and bolts of how an auction works or how you navigate the shop, those are things that can be used a lot. Routes / plays. This is a thing I like the most about football versus a lot of other sports. A lot of other sports kind of have plays, but in football, it's very explicit, right? You draw a route for a wide receiver, that's where he's supposed to go. And if he doesn't go there, then like that's how you get interceptions, right? You draw a blocking route, this running back chips this guy, then runs this route, right? The routes that these guys run are very specific and you're expected to follow the assignments. So that whole idea of, that's a good word. It's not plays, it's assignments. the whole assignment system and route system, there's a lot of really cool ways to use it. And it's not trivial. It really isn't trivial because you have to roll routes and assignments into a read and react AI system. And it's tricky. But Cyber League is we're going to develop both of those so that they work together. And that's going to be important later. What else? I think that's it. I think that's the main thing we're getting out of Cyber League. Obviously, there's more to the Cyber League game, but as far as like providing tools to other games, these are the most important things. What I'm thinking about right now, it seems to make the most sense, is we're going to hit Next Fest February with Cyber League 2. That seems to make the most sense to me. One, because Cyber League it's already so far along because I've already launched Cyber League 1 and because I've already developed a lot of these systems for Desktop Dynasties. And because some of the incoming systems that I haven't developed will be coming from the town game. So by the time Cyber League gets to full development, there's going to be very little that's not already developed in some way. So Next Fest February seems reasonable for a demo. My guess is Town Game will launch sometime November, December. Cyber League 2, probably April, early April is what I'm thinking, because that'll be roughly draft time when people are starting to get geared up for football, and there are no football games releasing in April. So I think that's going to be the right time to launch Cyber League 2. So that means if I'm going to launch in April, March or April, that means I got to hit Next Fest February. So that's where we are there. What comes after that? Well, I got two options. And right now, I could just keep in mind, I could flip-flop these two games. These are definitely the next two games. Their order may flip-flop, though. Just know. I'm going to go in the order I think I'm going to do right now. The order that I think it's going to work. The next one will also be in the sports franchise. I'm thinking. There's some reasons why, but they're tenuous. It could go either way. But as of right now, this one's going to be called Merc League. This is Merc League. I may have talked about this game before. I've been thinking about doing this game for a really long time. But I can never find the right time to do it. This is basically a team mercenary sports league, basically. It's essentially what it is. Doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. This is the cool part about Merc League that I really like. Let's use a different color for this just to make it easier to understand. Let's not use yellow. Let's use purple. Let's use purple. What we're gonna need on Merc League, town upgrades are gonna go directly into Merc League because of your base. Right? If you're a mercenary team, you got to have a base. Right? The townie system, because you have a base, you're gonna want it to be cool, right? Which means we're gonna use the townie system. We want your base to look alive. The quest system is actually going to be a ginormous part of Merc League. Is mostly going to be focused around air quote quests. They're going to be jobs, right? They're going to be mercenary jobs, but essentially they're quests, right? This is basically the same thing. The friendship system is going to go into Merc League because you want your mercenaries to have rivalries. You want them to have people they like, people they hate. You want them to work really well with some people, but not so well with other people. And you want those relationships to occur organically through gameplay. That's what the friendship system is. Again, it's like the nicer version of the nemesis system. So basically everything from Town Game, every system that we create in Town Game is going to come into Merc League. Also, the movement system is going to come into Merc League. The AI system from Cyber League is going to come into Merc League. Obviously, the shop system is going to come into Merc League. And I'm pretty sure the routes and assignment system is going to come into Merc League. So the way I have this Merc League in my mind is it's basically a perfect combination of these two games. It's basically every system that those two games come up with, put them together, and you get Merc League. So there's no wasted effort here. Everything that I've made is going to just basically give me a free game. So that's probably coming next. What do we get out of Merc League? Well, we start to get, first of all, we refine. Ooh, I don't want to do that. We got to be smaller. Here's what we get out of Merc League. We expand and refine all the previous systems, right? Because every system so far was used in one game. Merc League gets them and we refine them. We expand on them and we refine them. We also start to develop human animation systems. This is going to be the first thing where we start really pushing human animation systems. We create controlled, we'll just call them battles system. This is where we start to, not only can you assign quests, but now you take part in the quest. So it's like the next, Merc League is like the next evolution of the quest system. This quest system, you just put your parties together and you send them off and it basically fast sims it and then they come back. Merc League, you put the quest, you get the quest, you go out and you take part in the quest. So this controlled, let's call it, you're in the quest system. That's actually the number one thing coming out of Merc League really is this you're in the quest system. This you're in the quest system is really what drives the fact that we are expanding human animations. The effects systems. So Town Game and Town Game is very there's probably not going to be any special effects. There's going to be no VFX. Cyber League will have very few VFX, probably a few particles, maybe a couple of explosions, maybe some sparks, maybe some flames, smoke, but that's kind of it. Merc League is going to ramp that up, and I'm going to have to develop a full effects system for Merc League. And that's mostly what we're going to get out of Merc League. There's going to be some small stuff that we also develop just kind of on the side. But when I look at why does this fit into the game, into the schedule here, it's because of these things. Where are we going to stick Merc League? We're going to hopefully get Merc League in next Fest, June 2027. Hopefully. It feels reasonable because, again, it's by the time we get to Merc League, almost all of the systems have been made and tested and released. So we're just kind of refining everything we've done. What comes after Merc League? Well, this is the one that could flip with Merc League. I think this is the right order right now, but it could flip. That game is, what do we even call it? Let's just call it friendship game. Let's call it questionable hero. This was the very first non-sports game I wanted to make ever. And I've never been skilled enough to be able to actually make this game. So, little known fact, the whole Friendship franchise is essentially building towards this Questionable Hero franchise. So I would like to get it on the table as soon as possible. The problem is, like, I need a lot of stuff to make this work. And let's talk about what the stuff is. So again, I need all of the town game systems. I need, actually, let's just do it this way. Basically, I need everything from Merc League. Everything that went into Merc League, it's the same inputs that I need for Questionable Hero. And this is why they could flip flop, is because the input systems for both of these games are pretty much identical. I could flop the two, and the systems that I need to make both games are exactly the same. The difference between these games this is like a team-based. Merc League is like a team-based quest game. Questionable Hero is more of an individual-based quest game. Kind of like a role-playing game where part of your role is to influence the other characters. That's kind of what Questionable Hero is, right? You're a character in that, but you really can't get very far on your own. So instead of like managing a team, the game is about you building a team, I guess, through influence, something like that. I think that's the best way I can describe it right now. The one reason I do think it should come after Merc League is because of this You're in the Quest system and the effects. I think it could go reverse too, where you do Questionable Hero first and create the You're in the Quest system and create the effect system for Questionable Hero, and then Merc League uses them afterwards. So they kind of can flip flop. The reason I have them this way though is because Merc League needs a much simpler version of these two than Questionable Hero does. Questionable Hero needs them to be a little more advanced. So in my mind, the timing makes sense to do an initial development of these systems in Merc League, then improve them in Questionable Hero. Is kind of how my mind is working right now. And then of course we would try to hit Next Fest with Questionable Hero in October. What are the systems that Questionable Hero does? It's the exact same systems as Merc League. I mean, they're basically the same game, just instead of a team, it's a person. So we think about, so this all makes sense from timing and systems, right? How does each of these games move their franchise forward? So this is kind of interesting for me. Town game. Whoa, that's not what I wanted. Let's get this. Town game is like, think of this as like volume 1 of a seven part series, right? I'm introducing a lot of the ideas. The characters are going to be the same characters, literally the same characters. I'm going to use the exact same character models for all of the Friendship franchise. So Town game is like introducing the characters and introducing the whole relationships thing. Questionable Hero then pushes that forward instead. So instead of a town, Questionable Hero is the world, or actually not the whole world. We'll just call it the land, the kingdom. Let's say the kingdom. So it's not just a town. Now it's like the continent, right? The whole kingdom, and these characters interacting in the outside of the town. Questionable hero then will then be a springboard to the world. I'm going to air quote that because there is, I'm not going to spoil anything right now. There is a story. This whole universe has a backstory already. I've already got it. I've already come up with it. Every game in the Friendship franchise is actually part of building this backstory. So that's a big thing about the Friendship franchise is every game that I make in that franchise has to move the story forward in some way. Because like at the end, when I'm an, AAA tier game developer and I'm making multi-$100 million versions of the Friendship franchise, I want the story to make sense from all the previous games. Sports franchise, again, I'm trying to move the franchise forward every time. Cyber League is create all of the initial mechanics, create, all the base systems. Merc League then moves the systems forward and a little bit from, hey, it's a bunch of robots that are just playing a very basic game of football to, okay, now those systems can be used in a whole bunch of new and interesting ways. The first question anybody might have is, why didn't you just do NFL football here? Right? Why didn't you just do like NCAA? Why not just go to real football? I mean, that's what everybody's going to want. Well, because of a couple of reasons. One, making another NFL football game, like, does that really move the franchise forward? I can think of like 5 pro style football games in development right now. Like, me making another one doesn't really move the franchise forward. All it does is just put another game out there for everybody to say is not good enough. I don't feel like that's moving the franchise forward. Until I can add something new to the football, like the football genre, I'm not going to just throw another football game out there, right? Like I said, I gotta move the franchise forward. I do think having, and like, I'm not so subtle. One thing I'm doing here, I know I'm not being super subtle here. These are essentially like real sports hidden. Yeah, Cyber League and Merc League they're basically real life sports that I'm kind of hiding in alternate genres. Like obviously Cyber League 2 is football, right? the league is going to be very similar to the NCAA, right? It's going to be very similar to college football. Right. Merc League is going to be like very similar in style to some combination of like the NBA and Gladiators, right? It's just gonna be like some NBA adjacent type league. I like a lot of things about the Pro Sports League. The thing I don't like the most about making sports games is everybody expects your game, no matter what you're trying to do. If you say it's human football, they expect it to be exactly like the NFL. And there's just no room for creativity. But if you make it robots, nobody can say that. So like, why isn't it like the NFL? Well, because it's robots. That's why. That's why I don't need penalties, because it's robots. So anyway, that's my thought process though. Vibe games, I do have a lot of vibe games in mind, but this is not the time to be making vibe games. So the first time we can maybe see a vibe game is somewhere after Next Fest 27, maybe in 2028. That might be the first time we really start exploring vibe games. So I think that's kind of the plan. I think that's the plan. Let me look through my notes real quick. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I got a lot of notes that basically just sum up or was the detail that got us to where this diagram is. What comes after Merc League and Questionable Hero? I don't know. A lot of that's going to depend on how well these 4 games did. I'm getting 4 bites at the apple in the best case scenario. Worst case, I think one of these, worst case scenario, I'm kind of thinking if things don't go well, like development speed wise, my thought is one of these 2 is going to get skipped. I don't think we're going to skip the first 2 next fests. I think the risk, this is the risk, is on the next 2. Just because these first 2 games are, I've been either thinking about them or developing them for so long. I think I'm going to be able to knock those out pretty easily. The Merc League and the Questionable Hero, it just relies so much on the input from the first 2 games. And then timing wise, like if Cyber League launches a little bit late, it could, kind of cut into the dev timeline of Merc League. Or if Merc League launches late, then Questionable Heroes timeline is going to be hit. So I think the risk is on the back end. But I think this is going to give me, I'm going to get 3 bites of the apple before, let's take a look at the timeline again. Let's stop sharing that. What do we got? February 27. Okay, that's like way up here. All right, so I got till October of 28, realistically. So I'm going to get 2 bites at the apple before I run out of savings. Generally, that's not horrible. I got to imagine I'm going to make it a little bit out of my first 2 games, even if it's not enough to sustain for a whole year. I got to imagine there's gonna be a little bit there. But in any case, I get 2 bites before savings is up, and I get all 4 bites before I go bankrupt. Like, if I can't make enough in 4 really well thought out, really, like, each one is a progression of the next one. So by the time I get to the 4th game, when I start relaunching the 4th game, like, I should be so far ahead of where I am today. Like, if between those 4 and the progression between them, if I can't make enough to sustain a 1-person game dev company, I probably need to be doing something else anyways. It's kind of how I'm looking at it. Like, I also think this whole idea of building each game, building towards something. I'm actually, for me, that's the most important thing about this whole system, this whole plan. Because I do believe if you build forward every single game, right? I'm probably thinking, I mean, I don't have to come out of the gate competing with AAA studios, right? I probably, for the first, through 2027, I'm probably competing with other 1 to 3 man game dev studios. Maybe 1 to 5 person game dev studios is where I'm really competing for the first year. Maybe the first 2 years I'm competing with the 1 to 5 game dev, 1 to 5 people game dev studios. And I think just from my previous experience going to like game development conferences and stuff, I think right now I can compete with at least 60% of them. Like, I definitely could come out and hold my own against at least 60% of them. Say the other 40%, I got some work to do. But if I keep building, I think by the end of 2 years, probably in my third year, if this all works, by the time I get to my third year, I'll have 2 years of every game building on each other and providing tools for the next game. I have to imagine by the third year, I'm competing with like $1 million game studios, like $1 to $3 million game studios. Just in terms of quality and the complexity of systems and like the depth of the game, features, just all of that stuff. I should, by year 3, I should be competing with $1 million game studios, $1 to $3 million. And if things go right, like in 4 or 5 years, I should be competing with like $10 million games, $5 to $10 million game studios. That's kind of how I'm thinking. I'm not going to be swimming in the tiny pool forever is basically what I'm saying. Like my goal is much larger. My goal is not to be a cute little solo game dev who's just happy to make a living. Like that's not my goal, right? I'm going to be happy with that for maybe 2 years. And then I need to be throwing punches with the big boys. So I'm going to work my way up the ladder. Just like the characters in my games are, right? I'm going to level up each year. In 5 years, I want to be punching at the AA developers with like $10 million budgets. That's the goal. I don't know. We'll see. I got 2 years to swim in the little pond. We'll see how it works. Anyway, I think that's it. That's good for our first actual real game dev like a psychopath video. You can tell by my timelines, I'm taking the psychopath part seriously. Now I got to go for a bike ride. So I'll catch you all later. See ya.